Mentally strong people live by a simple rule. They don't give their power away. Most people don't notice when it happens because it feels normal. A rough morning shows up and the mind points outward. The job is the problem. The family is the problem. The past is the problem. The economy is the problem. And while some of those things may be real obstacles, blaming them quietly creates a second problem that is far more dangerous. It convinces you that you can't move until something outside of you changes. That is how progress dies. Mentally strong people don't pretend life is fair, but they refuse to live like victims of circumstance. They understand that the world can be difficult, and they can still choose a stronger mindset inside it. Their strength begins the moment they stop asking who caused this and start asking what they will do next. Weak thinking looks for someone to point at because blame brings temporary relief. It feels good for a moment because it removes pressure. But relief is not the same as growth. Blame is comfort that steals your future. It keeps your mind busy while your life stays exactly the same. You can replay the story all day, how someone treated you, how you were misunderstood, how things didn't go your way, and still remain stuck. Mentally strong people notice this pattern early. They understand that every time they blame something outside themselves, they hand over control. When control is gone, progress becomes impossible. Your emotions start depending on other people's behavior, and that is a tiring way to live. So mentally strong people choose ownership instead. Not because it is easy, but because ownership creates movement. Movement creates options, and options change lives. Owning your thoughts does not mean denying pain or pretending everything is fine. It means you decide how long you stay there. You decide what meaning you give the situation. Two people can experience the same setback and walk away with completely different futures. One becomes bitter, the other becomes better. The difference is not the problem itself, but the way it is interpreted. Mentally strong people take responsibility even when something was not their fault. Responsibility is not about blame, it is about control. When you say this is my responsibility, you move from helplessness into leadership. You stop waiting for permission to move forward. You stop expecting the world to change before you do. That shift alone can change the direction of an entire life. Language plays a powerful role in this process. Mentally strong people pay close attention to the words they use inside their own mind. They don't say someone made me angry because that sentence gives away power. They say I feel angry, and then they decide what to do next. That small shift changes everything. One sentence turns emotion into a prison. The other turns it into information. Emotions are real, but they are not commands. Thoughts appear automatically, but they are not always true. Mentally strong people understand that the mind will produce excuses that sound logical and comforting. It will say it's too late, it's too hard, it's unfair, or I'm not ready. Instead of obeying those thoughts, they question them. They ask whether the thought is helping or simply protecting them from effort. Most people believe strength means never feeling doubt or fear. That is not true. Mentally strong people feel doubt, fear, and frustration just like everyone else. The difference is they do not allow those feelings to decide their behavior. They act despite them. They understand that strength is not the absence of negative thoughts. Strength is the refusal to obey them. Each time they choose action over excuses, they build self-respect, and self-respect becomes quiet confidence. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, but steady confidence that holds when life becomes uncomfortable. Confidence grows when you prove to yourself that you can respond well even under pressure. Every day provides opportunities to practice ownership. Traffic delays, criticism, mistakes, bad news, and unexpected problems all trigger the urge to blame. Mentally strong people pause in those moments and ask one question: what is in my control right now? That question redirects attention away from frustration and toward action. Over time, this habit changes how life feels. You stop reacting emotionally to everything around you. You become more deliberate, more grounded, and more resilient. Progress accelerates because energy is no longer wasted on complaint. It is invested in solutions. There is a quiet freedom that comes from owning your thoughts. When you stop blaming others, you stop waiting for circumstances to change. You stop waiting for people to behave differently. You stop giving your peace away. Life does not become easier, but you become stronger. And strength makes life feel lighter. Mental strength is built in private moments when no one is watching and it would be easy to complain. Mentally strong people win those moments. They own their thoughts, own their reactions, and own their growth. That decision restores control. Control creates direction. Direction, repeated daily, becomes destiny. That is how mentally strong people think. Mental strength shows itself most clearly in the space between what happens and how you respond. That space is small, often just a few seconds, but it decides everything. Most people lose their peace not because life is too difficult, but because they react too fast. Words come out before thought. Decisions are made before understanding. Emotions take control before wisdom has time to appear. Mentally strong people learn to slow that moment down. They don't rush to respond because they value inner calm more than the urge to defend themselves or prove a point. They understand that peace is fragile when reactions are uncontrolled, and once it is lost, it takes far more effort to regain than to protect it in the first place. Life constantly presses emotional buttons. Someone speaks carelessly. A plan collapses. Expectations are not met. Stress arrives without warning. The untrained mind reacts instantly, often with anger, frustration, or fear. The trained mind pauses. That pause is not weakness, it is discipline. In that pause, the nervous system settles, and the brain moves from emotion to judgment. This is where clarity lives. Mentally strong people know that the fastest reaction is rarely the best one. Fast responses may feel powerful in the moment, but they often leave regret behind. Slowing down feels uncomfortable at first, especially in a world that rewards speed, but it prevents damage that cannot easily be undone. Slowing your reaction does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. Mentally strong people feel deeply. They simply don't allow feelings to drive the wheel. They understand that emotions are signals, not commands. Anger signals a boundary. Fear signals uncertainty. Frustration signals unmet expectations. These signals deserve attention, but not blind obedience. When emotions control behavior, peace disappears. When awareness guides behavior, peace remains intact. Mentally strong people give themselves permission to feel without rushing to act. That restraint becomes one of their greatest strengths. Many people believe reacting quickly shows confidence. In reality, it often reveals insecurity. Fast reactions are usually attempts to protect ego, defend identity, or regain control. Mentally strong people don't feel the need to respond to every comment, correct every opinion, or win every exchange. They are secure enough to let some things pass. Silence, when chosen intentionally, is not weakness. It is strength. By slowing their reactions, they refuse to let other people decide their emotional state. Their peace comes from within, not from external approval or validation. One of the hidden benefits of slowing reactions is clarity. When the mind is rushed, it sees only part of the picture. When the mind slows, it notices tone, context, intention, and consequence. This wider perspective leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to better outcomes. Mentally strong people understand that reacting emotionally often solves nothing. Responding thoughtfully, even if delayed, often resolves more than force ever could. Calm responses reduce conflict. Measured words build trust. Over time, people learn that your presence brings stability instead of chaos. Slowing reactions also protects energy. Constant emotional reacting keeps the nervous system in a state of alert. It drains focus and creates mental exhaustion. Mentally strong people conserve energy by choosing their responses carefully. They do not attend every argument. They do not match every tone. They do not explain themselves to everyone. This selectivity allows them to remain grounded even under pressure. Calm becomes their default state, not because life is calm, but because their reactions are controlled. Peace becomes something they protect, not something they chase. This skill takes practice. The urge to react is automatic. Slowing down must be trained. Mentally strong people build this habit deliberately. They pause before responding. They breathe. They ask themselves what response serves their future, not their momentary emotion. Each time they choose response over reaction, discipline strengthens. Over time, calm becomes natural. Reactivity fades. Their presence gains weight. People listen more closely because thoughtful words carry authority. Emotional outbursts are forgotten. Measured responses are remembered. When you slow your reactions, life changes in subtle but powerful ways. Problems still exist. Pressure still comes. But your inner state remains steady. You stop fighting every moment. You stop giving your peace away. Mental strength is not loud or dramatic. It is calm, patient, and controlled. Slowing your reactions is not about holding back. It is about choosing wisely. And when you protect your peace consistently, it becomes the foundation for better thinking, better relationships, and better outcomes. That is how mentally strong people stay centered in a world that constantly tries to pull them off balance. Trust in yourself is not built through positive thinking or sudden confidence. It is built through evidence. Evidence comes from one place only: your actions. Mentally strong people understand that the mind believes what behavior repeatedly proves. Every time you do what you said you would do, even in small ways, you send a powerful message to yourself. You show yourself that your word matters. Over time, those small acts of follow-through form a foundation of trust that does not shake easily. This trust is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes how you move through the world, how you decide, and how you respond under pressure. Many people struggle with self-doubt not because they lack ability, but because they have broken too many promises to themselves. They planned, they committed, then they delayed, avoided, or quit. Each time this happens, the mind takes note. It learns inconsistency. Confidence slowly erodes not from failure, but from unreliability. Mentally strong people recognize this pattern and reverse it deliberately. They stop relying on motivation and start relying on commitment. They choose fewer promises and honor them fully. By doing this, they rebuild trust with themselves, one action at a time. Follow-through is not about grand achievements or dramatic discipline. It begins with small, ordinary actions repeated consistently. Waking up when you said you would. Finishing a task even when energy is low. Showing up when no one is watching. These moments seem insignificant, but they compound quietly. Each completed action becomes proof. Proof turns into belief. Belief turns into confidence. Mentally strong people don't wait to feel confident before acting. They act to earn confidence. They understand that confidence is not a starting point. It is a result. Breaking promises to yourself carries a hidden cost. It creates hesitation. It weakens decision-making. When you say you will do something and don't, the next commitment feels heavier. Motivation drops because the mind expects disappointment. Mentally strong people avoid this cycle by becoming dependable to themselves first. They understand that discipline is not harsh or punishing. It is respectful. It is treating your goals, time, and future seriously. Follow-through becomes a form of self-respect, and self-respect changes how you carry yourself in every situation. Follow-through also reduces mental noise. Unfinished commitments linger in the background of the mind. They drain focus and create stress. When you complete what you start, the mind becomes lighter. Clarity improves. Decisions feel easier. Mentally strong people value this mental cleanliness. They don't overload themselves with unrealistic commitments. They simplify. They choose what matters most and give it full attention. This simplicity protects consistency. Consistency protects trust. Trust creates stability. There will be days when follow-through feels heavy. Energy drops. Resistance rises. These moments matter more than the easy ones. Completing tasks on difficult days sends a strong signal to the mind. It says, effort does not depend on mood. That message builds resilience. Mentally strong people do not demand perfection from themselves. They demand honesty. If they fall behind, they adjust calmly. They recommit without self-attack. Discipline paired with compassion creates sustainable strength. Over time, follow-through shapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. This identity shift is powerful. Behavior aligns naturally with who you believe you are. Confidence becomes steady instead of emotional. Fear loses influence because you trust your ability to respond. There is freedom in knowing you can rely on yourself. Decisions feel lighter. Goals feel achievable. Life feels more stable. When you build trust in yourself through follow-through, you create an inner anchor that holds even when conditions change. That is how mentally strong people become unshakable from the inside out. Confidence does not arrive first. Discomfort does. That truth surprises many people because most have been taught to wait until they feel ready before acting. Mentally strong people know better. They understand that discomfort is not a warning sign, but a growth signal. Whenever you step into something new, the body reacts, the heart beats faster, the mind becomes uncertain, doubt appears. This is not failure, it is adjustment. Mentally strong people do not rush to escape this feeling. They stay present with it long enough for strength to form. They understand that confidence is built on the other side of unease, not before it. Discomfort shows up in many forms. Awkward conversations, new responsibilities, unfamiliar environments, early mornings, hard workouts, honest self-reflection. The instinct is always the same: pull back, delay, or distract. Relief feels tempting because it reduces tension immediately, but relief also freezes progress. Mentally strong people choose differently. They allow discomfort to exist without letting it control their actions. They do not label unease as danger. They recognize it as the mind adjusting to unfamiliar territory. Familiarity creates comfort. Repetition creates familiarity. That is how discomfort slowly transforms into confidence. Many people confuse discomfort with incapability. They feel nervous and assume they are not ready. They feel uncertain and assume they are not good enough. Mentally strong people reject this interpretation. They understand that the mind resists change even when the change is positive. Growth threatens old identity. Doubt appears to protect what is familiar. Instead of arguing with doubt, mentally strong people continue forward calmly. They let experience do the teaching. Each exposure weakens fear. Each repetition builds steadiness. Avoidance creates fragility. Exposure creates resilience. Sitting with discomfort trains emotional endurance. It teaches the nervous system that unease is not an emergency. Over time, the body learns to remain calm under pressure. This calm becomes confidence. Confidence is not the absence of nerves. It is the ability to function while feeling them. Mentally strong people feel fear and still act. They feel uncertainty and still show up. They do not wait for emotions to disappear. They allow them to exist without giving them authority. This emotional maturity separates growth from stagnation. Discomfort also sharpens awareness. When things feel uneasy, attention increases. You become more alert, more focused, more engaged. Mentally strong people use this heightened awareness to learn faster. They observe their reactions instead of judging them. They adjust behavior instead of retreating. They understand the difference between pain and discomfort. Pain signals harm and requires care. Discomfort signals growth and requires patience. Knowing the difference allows them to stay present without causing damage to themselves or others. Most people wait to feel confident before taking action. Mentally strong people act while feeling unsure. They know that action builds clarity more effectively than thought. Experience teaches faster than imagination. Over time, discomfort loses its intensity. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once caused anxiety becomes routine. Confidence grows quietly through repetition. It becomes durable because it is based on lived experience, not mood or motivation. There is strength in staying in the conversation, staying in the effort, staying in the moment when leaving would be easier. Mentally strong people stay long enough to learn something valuable. Growth is not comfortable. Comfort is stable. Growth is unstable at first. Mentally strong people accept instability as part of progress. They trust the process even when it feels awkward. And as confidence grows, discomfort fades into familiarity. What remains is capability. Sit with discomfort long enough and confidence will follow. That is how mentally strong people grow without rushing or retreating. The human mind never stops talking. Thoughts arrive automatically, often without warning or permission. Some are useful, many are not. Mentally strong people understand a truth that most people overlook. Not every thought deserves belief. A thought is only powerful once you accept it as truth. Until then, it is simply mental noise. Mental strength begins when you slow down and question what your mind is telling you instead of obeying it blindly. The moment you believe every thought, you surrender control. The moment you question them, you reclaim it. Negative thoughts often sound convincing because they use familiar language. They speak with certainty. They repeat past experiences. They predict failure and highlight risk. Because they feel personal, people assume they must be accurate. Mentally strong people do not make this mistake. They treat thoughts as suggestions, not commands. The mind is designed to protect, not to help you grow. It remembers pain and exaggerates danger to keep you safe. That instinct may be useful for survival, but it becomes limiting when you are trying to improve. Mentally strong people recognize this pattern and respond with awareness rather than fear. One of the most powerful shifts mentally strong people make is learning to observe their thoughts instead of identifying with them. Instead of saying this thought is me, they say this thought is happening. That small change creates distance. Distance creates choice. You stop being trapped inside the thought and begin evaluating it. Observation restores leadership. Once you can watch a thought, you can decide whether it deserves attention or dismissal. This skill turns the mind from a dictator into a tool. Negative thoughts often deal in extremes. Always, never, everyone, no one. They present the future as fixed and the past as proof. Mentally strong people listen carefully for these signals. When a thought feels absolute, they pause. Life is rarely absolute. Growth exists in nuance. Instead of letting one mistake define an entire identity, they look for balance. They ask whether the thought is accurate, helpful, or simply emotional. They don't try to replace negativity with forced positivity. They choose realism. Truth builds strength. Illusion weakens it. The mind often confuses feelings with facts. Feeling tired becomes, I can't do this. Feeling nervous becomes, I'm not capable. Feeling uncertain becomes, this will fail. Mentally strong people separate emotion from conclusion. They acknowledge how they feel without letting that feeling decide the outcome. Emotions change quickly. Facts require evidence. When you question a thought, emotional intensity softens. Anxiety loses its grip. Clarity returns. Over time, this practice creates emotional stability instead of constant inner conflict. Questioning thoughts also protects self-respect. When you believe every critical voice in your head, confidence erodes. You hesitate more. You shrink your goals. Mentally strong people guard their inner dialogue carefully. They recognize when a thought belongs to the past rather than the present. Old failures, old criticism, and old labels do not deserve unlimited influence. Growth requires updated thinking. When you question outdated thoughts, you create room for progress to enter. Mentally strong people understand that confident individuals do not have fewer negative thoughts. They respond to them differently. They pause before belief. They choose which thoughts guide action. This ability improves relationships, performance, and peace of mind. Thoughts become information rather than identity. Over time, the mind learns balance. Extremes soften. Calm becomes familiar. When you question negative thoughts before believing them, you stop allowing the mind to sabotage your growth. You become a thoughtful leader of your inner world. That is how mentally strong people think. Showing up every day without motivation is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. People believe consistency is powered by passion, excitement, or willpower that feels heroic. In reality, those things are unreliable. Motivation comes and goes. Energy rises and falls. Mood changes without warning. Mentally strong people do not build their lives on unstable forces. They build them on decisions made in advance. They decide who they are going to be before emotions get involved. When motivation disappears, as it always does, their commitment remains. They do not ask how they feel. They ask what needs to be done. That mindset removes drama from progress and replaces it with steadiness. Most people wait to feel ready before they begin. They wait for clarity, confidence, or inspiration to appear. This waiting feels responsible, but it quietly delays growth. Readiness is emotional, and emotions are inconsistent. If your actions depend on how you feel, your results will be just as inconsistent. Mentally strong people understand that action creates clarity, not the other way around. They start even when they feel tired, distracted, or unsure. Once they begin, resistance softens, focus improves, momentum forms. The mind adjusts after movement begins, not before. Showing up first allows emotions to catch up later. Consistency is not about doing your best every day. It is about doing something even when your best feels out of reach. A short session counts. An imperfect effort counts. A slow day still counts. Mentally strong people remove the pressure to perform and replace it with the requirement to participate. They understand that momentum is fragile. Missing days breaks rhythm. Restarting takes more energy than continuing. By lowering the standard to showing up, they make starting easier. And starting is always the hardest part. Once they are in motion, progress takes care of itself. Many people quit because they expect every day to feel meaningful. They want visible progress and emotional reward from each effort. When those feelings don't appear, they assume something is wrong. Mentally strong people think differently. They understand that growth often feels boring while it is happening. The most important days rarely feel important at the time. They feel ordinary, repetitive, and even pointless. But those are the days laying the foundation. Growth does not announce itself. It reveals itself later when you realize you are calmer, stronger, or more capable than before. Showing up daily also changes identity. Each action is a vote for the person you are becoming. When you show up consistently, you stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. This shift matters. Identity drives behavior. When consistency becomes part of who you are, discipline no longer feels forced. You stop negotiating with excuses because the decision has already been made. Mentally strong people do not rely on constant self-control. They simplify life by making consistency non-negotiable. There will be days when showing up feels heavy. Energy is low. Discomfort is high. The mind offers convincing reasons to skip. Mentally strong people learn to tell the difference between rest and avoidance. Rest supports consistency. Avoidance erodes it. Rest is intentional and restorative. Avoidance hides behind justification. Showing up on hard days sends a powerful message to the mind. It says effort does not depend on comfort. That message builds resilience. Over time, discomfort loses authority. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes routine. Daily showing up also builds trust with yourself. Each time you act despite low motivation, you prove reliability. That reliability creates confidence that does not depend on results. You trust yourself to respond well, even when conditions are not ideal. This trust reduces anxiety about the future. You stop fearing bad days because you know you can handle them. Mentally strong people rely on this self-trust more than motivation. Motivation is temporary. Trust is durable. Trust holds when feelings fade. The truth is, most success stories are built on ordinary days stacked patiently together, not on sudden bursts of inspiration. People rarely fail because they lack potential. They fail because they stop showing up when progress becomes invisible. Mentally strong people continue anyway. They accept that results lag behind effort. They allow time for growth to compound. By showing up daily, quietly and imperfectly, they build a version of themselves that does not depend on motivation at all. They act because it is who they are, not because they feel like it. That is the real power of consistency. Just show up today. Tomorrow will take care of itself.
Learning faster has very little to do with intelligence and almost everything to do with how you respond when things go wrong. Mistakes are not interruptions to progress. They are the raw material of it. Mentally strong people understand this early. They don't waste energy pretending errors didn't happen or explaining them away. They face them directly. The moment something goes wrong, they look at it honestly instead of emotionally. This honesty shortens the distance between experience and understanding. When you stop arguing with reality, learning accelerates. Growth begins the instant you accept what already is instead of wishing it were different. Most people slow their own progress by protecting their ego. They justify, minimize, or shift blame to avoid discomfort. This may protect pride in the moment, but it delays the lesson hidden inside the mistake. Mentally strong people choose learning over image. They understand that every mistake carries information. It reveals flawed assumptions, rushed thinking, weak preparation, or blind spots. When responsibility is avoided, that information stays locked. When responsibility is accepted, clarity appears. Clarity leads to correction. Correction leads to improvement. Ownership is efficient. Avoidance is expensive. Owning a mistake does not mean attacking yourself or labeling yourself as a failure. Mentally strong people separate identity from behavior. They acknowledge that something went wrong without concluding that they are broken or incapable. Self-criticism clouds learning. Honest evaluation sharpens it. The goal is not punishment. The goal is progress. When mistakes are treated as data instead of personal flaws, improvement becomes practical rather than emotional. This mindset removes fear from the learning process and replaces it with curiosity. Speed in learning comes from shortening the time between action and adjustment. The faster you recognize an error, the faster you can adapt. Avoidance stretches that timeline. Denial stretches it even further. Mentally strong people collapse that timeline by facing mistakes immediately. They ask what happened, why it happened, and what needs to change. No drama, no delay. This responsiveness allows them to improve while others remain stuck repeating the same patterns. Learning accelerates when feedback is welcomed instead of resisted. Ownership also restores power. Blame hands control away. Responsibility pulls it back. Even when circumstances play a role, your response remains yours. Mentally strong people understand this distinction. They don't waste energy arguing about fairness. They focus on influence. When you believe you can affect outcomes, learning speeds up. Helplessness slows everything. Responsibility creates agency, and agency fuels progress. This belief allows mentally strong people to experiment without fear because they trust themselves to respond honestly, no matter the outcome. Many people repeat the same mistakes because they never fully acknowledge them. They rush past failure hoping it won't happen again, but without understanding why it happened in the first place. Mentally strong people slow down just enough to extract the lesson. Reflection turns experience into wisdom. Over time, patterns become clear. Weak habits are exposed. Rushed decisions are corrected. This precision compounds. Each mistake refines judgment. Each correction sharpens skill. Mastery is built this way, quietly and continuously. Owning mistakes also builds emotional resilience. The sting of being wrong is real. Embarrassment, frustration, and disappointment naturally appear. Mentally strong people allow these feelings without letting them control behavior. They don't collapse emotionally or shut down. They process the discomfort and move forward. This ability prevents mistakes from becoming stopping points. Instead, they become stepping stones. Learning faster is not about avoiding pain. It's about shortening its duration through honesty. Over time, this mindset changes how challenges are approached. Fear fades because mistakes are no longer threats. They become feedback. Curiosity replaces tension. Effort becomes lighter because learning feels inevitable rather than risky. Mentally strong people understand that mistakes are not obstacles on the path. They are the path. Each one removes illusion and sharpens understanding. The faster you own them, the faster you grow. In a world that rewards speed of learning more than perfection, this ability becomes a powerful advantage. That is how mentally strong people turn failure into forward motion. Every meaningful decision is a quiet trade between discomfort now and disappointment later. Effort asks something from you in the present: time, focus, patience, energy. Regret asks for nothing up front, which is why it feels so easy to choose. But regret always collects its payment later, slowly and with interest. Mentally strong people understand this exchange early. They don't dramatize effort, and they don't romanticize comfort. They look ahead and choose with awareness. They know that small actions taken today quietly protect the future from unnecessary pain. Effort is temporary, regret can linger for years. That understanding changes how they decide when resistance appears. Delay is rarely neutral. When you postpone action, you don't stay in the same place. You move backward without noticing. Avoiding effort reinforces a habit of avoidance. Acting despite resistance builds momentum. The two paths feel similar at first, but they lead to very different outcomes over time. Mentally strong people don't wait until the cost feels unbearable. They act when effort is still manageable. They know that the longer you wait, the heavier the task becomes. Early effort simplifies the future, late effort complicates it. Choosing effort today keeps options open tomorrow. The mind exaggerates the cost of effort. It imagines exhaustion, sacrifice, and difficulty far greater than what actually occurs once you begin. Regret works the opposite way. It feels light in the moment, but grows heavier with time. What starts as a missed workout, a delayed conversation, or an ignored opportunity slowly turns into a persistent question you can't stop asking. Mentally strong people see through this illusion. They know that effort usually shrinks once action begins, while regret expands when action is avoided. That knowledge makes starting easier. Choosing effort today requires honesty about the future. Mentally strong people imagine themselves looking back on this moment months or years from now. They ask a simple question: will I be glad I acted or frustrated that I avoided this? This future-focused thinking removes emotion from the decision. It replaces impulse with perspective. They understand that intentions don't shape the future. Actions do. Effort builds skills. Skills build confidence. Confidence creates opportunity. Regret builds nothing. It only replays what might have been. Effort is also an act of self-respect. When you push through resistance, you send yourself a message that you can handle discomfort. That belief matters. It shapes how you approach future challenges. People who consistently choose effort develop quiet confidence. They trust themselves not to abandon the moment when things get uncomfortable. Regret creates the opposite feeling. It breeds frustration with past versions of yourself. It drains energy instead of creating it. Mentally strong people choose alignment over comfort. They would rather struggle briefly than resent themselves later. Choosing effort does not guarantee immediate success. It guarantees integrity. You can fail after trying and still rest with peace. You can struggle while knowing you honored your potential. Most regret does not come from failed attempts. It comes from unattempted chances. Mentally strong people understand this distinction. They know that falling short after effort still builds character, while avoiding effort erodes it. Effort refines judgment. Avoidance dulls it. Even when outcomes are uncertain, effort keeps self-respect intact. Effort today also reduces pressure tomorrow. Work done early compounds. Skills built now make future challenges easier. Problems addressed sooner shrink. Avoidance causes accumulation. Tasks pile up. Decisions become heavier. Anxiety grows. Regret forms quietly in that accumulation. Mentally strong people relieve future pressure by applying present effort. They don't aim for constant strain. They choose intentional discomfort in service of long-term stability. Small efforts, repeated, prevent large regrets later. Over time, choosing effort becomes less about forcing yourself and more about honoring yourself. You stop asking whether you feel like doing the work and start asking whether future you will benefit. That shift reframes effort as care, not punishment. Life responds to participation, not potential. Effort is how you participate fully instead of drifting by default. When you consistently choose effort today, you protect your future from unnecessary regret. You give yourself the freedom to look back without resentment and say you didn't hold yourself back. That freedom is worth every ounce of effort you invest. Energy is one of the most valuable resources you have, yet it is also one of the easiest to lose without noticing. Unlike time or money, energy leaks quietly. It drains through conversations you don't want to have, obligations you accepted without thinking, environments that exhaust you, and expectations that were never yours to carry. Mentally strong people pay attention to this. They understand that when energy is depleted, focus weakens, patience shortens, and clarity disappears. Protecting energy is not indulgence, it is survival for growth. Without energy, even the strongest intentions collapse. Many people confuse boundaries with selfishness. They believe saying no makes them difficult, unkind, or uncaring. Mentally strong people understand the opposite is true. The absence of boundaries leads to resentment, burnout, and emotional exhaustion. When you say yes to everything, you eventually show up tired and irritated everywhere. That helps no one. Boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They are filters designed to protect what matters most. Each boundary removes unnecessary drain, so energy can be directed toward meaningful effort and connection. Boundaries are decisions made in advance. They reduce the need for constant negotiation. When you know what you will and won't tolerate, you stop debating every request internally. That clarity saves energy. It also builds self-respect. Each time you honor your limits, you reinforce the belief that your needs matter. Mentally strong people do not wait until exhaustion forces boundaries. They set them early. They understand that energy preserved is energy invested wisely rather than wasted recovering from burnout. One of the greatest energy drains is emotional labor performed out of obligation instead of choice. Constantly managing other people's emotions, expectations, or crises quietly consumes mental reserves. Mentally strong people learn the difference between compassion and absorption. They care without carrying what isn't theirs. They support without sacrificing themselves. Boundaries allow you to help from a place of strength rather than depletion. This balance keeps relationships healthier and prevents quiet resentment from building over time. Protecting energy also means being selective about environments. Noise, negativity, and chaos take a toll, even when you think you're unaffected. Mentally strong people curate their surroundings intentionally. They limit exposure to spaces, conversations, and information that drain focus and peace. This is not avoidance, it is alignment. The environment shapes behavior. When the environment supports clarity, growth becomes easier. When it undermines it, effort becomes heavier than necessary. Internal boundaries matter just as much as external ones. Overthinking, rumination, and harsh self-talk drain energy as effectively as demanding people. Mentally strong people know when to disengage from unproductive thoughts. They don't replay every mistake or entertain every worry. They redirect attention deliberately. Mental boundaries protect focus. Focus protects energy. Energy fuels progress. This internal discipline keeps the mind from becoming its own greatest obstacle. Time is the container for energy. When schedules are filled with obligations chosen by default rather than intention, energy has no space to recover. Mentally strong people protect time fiercely. They allow room for rest, reflection, and deep work. Rest is not laziness, it is maintenance. Without recovery, effort becomes unsustainable. Boundaries around time ensure that energy can regenerate instead of being constantly drained. Setting boundaries often creates discomfort at first. People may resist when access changes. Guilt may appear. Mentally strong people understand that guilt often signals the breaking of an old pattern, not wrongdoing. Discomfort fades with consistency. Relief follows. Over time, boundaries become natural. Life feels lighter not because demands disappear, but because unnecessary weight has been removed. Energy returns. Focus sharpens. Peace becomes more stable. Protecting your energy allows you to be fully present where it matters most. Instead of being spread thin everywhere, you show up deeply in fewer places. This depth improves the quality of your work and relationships. People don't benefit from a drained version of you. They benefit from a grounded one. Boundaries create sustainability. Sustainability creates long-term growth. When you protect your energy, you protect your ability to think clearly, act intentionally, and live with strength. That is how mentally strong people remain effective without burning out. Waiting to feel ready is one of the most convincing delays the mind creates. It sounds responsible, careful, even wise. But readiness is often just fear wearing a reasonable disguise. Mentally strong people understand that clarity rarely comes before action. It comes because of it. They don't wait for confidence to arrive. They move while uncertainty is still present. They accept that doubt is part of beginning and that progress is built through motion, not perfect conditions. The moment you stop waiting for readiness, you take back control of direction. Readiness suggests a future moment where fear disappears and certainty appears. That moment rarely comes. Information is always incomplete. Circumstances are never ideal. Energy fluctuates. Mentally strong people stop waiting for everything to align. They act with what they have, where they are. Decisiveness is not recklessness. It is the ability to choose without demanding guarantees. It means trusting your ability to adapt rather than your ability to predict. Movement reveals what thinking alone cannot. Hesitation often disguises itself as caution. True caution evaluates risk and then decides. Hesitation repeats the same concerns without resolution. Mentally strong people recognize when thinking has stopped serving progress. They gather reasonable information, then commit. Once they act, feedback becomes available. Reality teaches faster than imagination. Even imperfect action produces data. Data refines judgment. Judgment improves outcomes. Waiting produces none of these. Action unlocks the learning process. Fear often hides behind preparation. You tell yourself you need more time, more skills, more confidence, but confidence is rarely a prerequisite. It is a result. Each decisive step builds belief in your ability to handle challenges. Each delay weakens that belief. Mentally strong people understand that trust in self grows through use. Action builds trust. Waiting erodes it. Decisiveness strengthens identity. Indecision keeps identity fragile. There is also a cost to indecision that many people ignore. Opportunities expire, energy fades, momentum disappears. While you wait to feel ready, life moves on. Regret often comes not from making the wrong choice, but from never making one at all. Mentally strong people accept that not choosing is still a choice, and it often leads to outcomes they didn't intend. Acting decisively creates direction. Direction reduces mental noise. Clarity restores energy that hesitation was wasting. Decisive action simplifies life. Endless internal debate drains focus. A decision, even a challenging one, creates structure. Structure allows progress. Mentally strong people do not let emotions dictate action. Emotions change quickly. Values last longer. They act based on priorities and long-term vision, not momentary comfort. Feelings are acknowledged, but they are not obeyed. This separation creates consistency instead of emotional chaos. Many decisions feel heavier than they actually are. Most choices are adjustable. Acting decisively does not trap you, it positions you. From movement, you can pivot. From stillness, you can only speculate. Mentally strong people trust their ability to correct course if needed. They don't demand perfection. They demand responsiveness. Mistakes made through action teach more than flawless plans never executed. Courage is not built through reflection alone. It is built through repetition. Each time you act without full certainty, fear loses influence. You learn that even when things don't go as planned, you survive, adapt, and improve. This realization weakens hesitation over time. Growth stops feeling dangerous. Uncertainty becomes familiar. Mentally strong people grow into challenges rather than waiting for challenges to feel safe. Decisiveness also changes how others respond to you. Clarity builds trust. People listen to those who move with intention. Indecision creates friction because it slows momentum. Acting decisively signals leadership, even in personal choices. It shows that you are willing to take responsibility for direction instead of waiting for permission from certainty or approval from others. In the end, acting decisively is an act of self-belief. It says you don't need perfect conditions to begin. You trust yourself to learn as you go. When you stop waiting to feel ready and start moving with intention, progress becomes inevitable. Not because the path is clear, but because you are. That is how mentally strong people move forward while others remain stuck, waiting for readiness that never arrives. Mentally strong people think beyond the moment they are in. They don't let today's emotions decide tomorrow's direction. Most people live reactively, guided by how they feel right now. If they feel motivated, they act. If they feel tired, they delay. If they feel offended, they respond emotionally. This short-term thinking creates unstable results because emotions change constantly. Mentally strong people understand that emotions are temporary, but consequences are not. So they learn to step back and ask a different question. Instead of asking how they feel, they ask where this decision will lead. That single shift separates impulse from intention and transforms how life unfolds over time. Emotional thinking is fast, loud, and persuasive. It demands immediate relief. It wants comfort now, validation now, reaction now. Long-term thinking is quieter. It requires patience and restraint. It asks you to tolerate discomfort in the present to protect your future. Mentally strong people train themselves to listen to the quiet voice instead of the urgent one. They understand that urgency is rarely wisdom. Acting emotionally may feel satisfying in the moment, but it often creates regret later. Long-term thinking may feel uncomfortable at first, but it builds stability, progress, and peace that lasts. One of the clearest signs of mental strength is the ability to delay gratification. Mentally strong people can say no to what feels good now for what will feel meaningful later. They don't confuse pleasure with fulfillment. Emotional decisions chase comfort. Long-term decisions build character. This applies to health, relationships, work, and habits. Skipping effort today may feel harmless, but repeated often, it shapes a future you don't want. Mentally strong people visualize that future clearly. They let that vision guide their choices instead of short-lived emotions. Thinking long-term also requires emotional regulation. When emotions run high, perspective narrows. The mind focuses on winning the moment instead of protecting the future. Mentally strong people slow themselves down when emotions rise. They don't trust decisions made in anger, frustration, or excitement. They wait until emotion settles before committing to action. This patience prevents unnecessary damage. Words spoken emotionally cannot be unsaid. Actions taken impulsively cannot always be undone. Long-term thinkers protect themselves from these costs by choosing timing wisely. Many people sabotage progress because they confuse intensity with importance. Emotional thinking exaggerates problems and minimizes consequences. A bad day feels like a bad life. A small setback feels like failure. Mentally strong people zoom out. They view setbacks as data, not destiny. They understand that progress is uneven and that one moment rarely defines the journey. This broader perspective reduces anxiety and prevents emotional spirals. When you stop letting single moments define everything, pressure decreases and resilience increases. Long-term thinking also improves relationships. Emotional reactions create conflict. Long-term responses build trust. Mentally strong people consider how their words and actions will affect relationships over time, not just how they feel in the moment. They choose communication over reaction. They address issues without attacking. They prioritize resolution over ego. This does not mean suppressing feelings. It means expressing them in a way that supports connection rather than destruction. Relationships thrive when decisions are guided by care instead of impulse. Thinking long-term changes how failure is perceived. Emotional thinking treats failure as a verdict. Long-term thinking treats it as feedback. Mentally strong people don't collapse emotionally when things go wrong. They ask what this experience is teaching them. They adjust without self-punishment. This mindset keeps momentum alive. When failure is viewed as part of a longer process, fear loses its grip. You become more willing to take risks because you trust the timeline rather than the moment. This way of thinking also strengthens discipline. Discipline is not about force, it is about alignment. Mentally strong people align daily actions with long-term values instead of short-term moods. They show up even when they don't feel like it because they understand that consistency compounds. Emotional thinking asks what feels easiest today. Long-term thinking asks what builds the life you want. Over time, discipline becomes less about effort and more about identity. You act in ways that match who you are becoming. Long-term thinkers are also less reactive to external noise. Opinions, criticism, and comparison lose influence. Mentally strong people don't change direction every time someone disagrees or doubts them. They evaluate feedback carefully. If it helps, they use it. If it doesn't, they release it. Their sense of direction comes from internal clarity, not external approval. This stability protects focus and prevents emotional detours that slow progress. Ultimately, thinking long-term instead of emotionally creates freedom. You stop being controlled by mood, impulse, or pressure. You become intentional. You choose actions that respect your future self. Life becomes less chaotic because decisions are grounded in perspective rather than feeling. Mentally strong people don't eliminate emotion. They place it in the right role. Emotion informs, but vision decides. When you consistently think long-term, your choices align, your confidence grows, and your life begins to reflect intention instead of reaction. That is how mentally strong people stay steady while the world pulls in every direction.